Story 1. I work in the customer service center for a travel company. We handle a variety of tasks, but my specific department deals with flight bookings. We offer multiple price points and programs based on the customer's individual needs, but most people opt for the most affordable option, a buy one get one free deal. Since this is a buy one get one free arrangement, the flights included are basic, just simple, no frills transportation to get you where you need to go. If a traveler has specific needs, such as exclusively flying with a particular airline, requiring premium seats, or ensuring that someone travels alongside a relative on a separate reservation, those preferences must be handled through one of our other programs designed for customization. All of this information is available on our website, with a direct link included in the reservation confirmation. Despite this, I receive calls daily from customers who did not take the time to read the terms and conditions. For the most part, it's just part of the job, and I handle it without issue. And then there was Paul. Paul's call was transferred to me without prior notice from another department. This immediately put me in a difficult position, as standard procedure at my company requires the initial agent to provide me with a reservation number and a brief summary of the issue before transferring the call. This serves two purposes. First, it allows me to anticipate the nature of the call and pull up any relevant information. And second, it spares the customer from having to repeat themselves, something that can further frustrate an already irritated caller. Unfortunately, that courtesy was not extended, and I was already off to a challenging start. Before I even had a chance to speak, I heard Paul muttering under his breath, venting his frustrations about how this is ridiculous. Nevertheless, I remained professional. After spending my entire adult life in customer-facing roles, I've become quite unshakable in these situations. So, I ignored his initial complaints, proceeded with a necessary security verification, pulled up his booking, and asked how I could assist him. What followed was nearly 6 uninterrupted minutes of Paul listing every issue he had with the terms and conditions of the buy one get one free deal. He was upset about not being able to select a preferred airline, frustrated that there might be a layover, and insistent that nobody told him about these possibilities. For the record, the situation he was complaining about had not actually occurred, yet it was still just a possibility. His flights had not even been issued at this point, meaning I had no way of knowing exactly what they would be, only what the service agreement allowed them to be. Since I believe customers should always be fully informed, I make it a point to review the terms and conditions carefully with everyone I assist. If a customer chooses not to read them or reach out for clarification beforehand, at some point, that responsibility falls on them. Still, I apologized. However, before I could even finish my sentence, he cut me off with, "You're not sorry, don't say that, you're not sorry." First of all, it's not for him to decide how I feel. As it happens, I genuinely am a helpful person and always go out of my way to ensure that customers get what they need for their travel plans, even if that means advising them not to book flights through us. I would rather lose a sale than have a customer end up with a trip that doesn't meet their expectations. Ignoring his outburst, I let him know that he was still within the allowed time frame to switch to one of our other programs that would provide him with the flexibility he wanted. It might cost slightly more per person, but "So you're going to charge me more? This is ridiculous." Well, yes. You can have the buy one get one free deal, or you can have control over your flight details. You cannot have both. But nobody told me. Never mind the fact that the terms and conditions were available for him to read at any time. Still, I responded, "If you don't want to switch to the other program, you still have time to cancel your flight reservation with us without penalty. You could then book your flights independently to better suit your budget and preferences. I'd be happy to assist you with that." "No, you just don't want to help me." At this point, he wasn't entirely wrong. I no longer wanted to help him. The conversation had stretched to nearly 20 minutes, and his escalating volume was giving me a headache. I attempted to de-escalate. "Paul, I'm sorry, but..." "Why do you keep saying that?" "No, you're not." I wish I had a clever comeback or some perfect moment of compliance that turned the situation in my favor, but there wasn't one. After nearly 30 minutes of going in circles, I simply reiterated his 3 available options. He could switch to a customizable program, cancel his reservation and book his own flights, or stick with the buy one get one free deal and see what flights he was assigned. Before ending the call, I made sure to thoroughly document our conversation in his reservation notes to avoid future disputes. Story 2. I'm a 43-year-old IT guy, divorced with 2 kids, a 9-year-old girl and a 7-year-old boy. I'm a member of a yacht club and own a small-ish 34 Bavaria cruiser from 2008. Next to my kids, she's my pride and joy. Every year, I take a 3-week vacation along with my kids, and we go cruising for the better part of those 3 weeks. We have a small dinghy that basically serves as our pickup truck/food haul. Now, because of COVID, we couldn't go anywhere outside our home country, so we said, screw it, we'll be tourists in our own country, and went for a cruise to all the small cozy harbors we normally don't see. So, cruise is a go. My son knows about the lines and knows how to dock and whatnot. My daughter is the dinghy skipper during this. She loves that thing. We always have our club pennant flying as well as the Jolly Roger. Jolly Roger means, kids on board, come play. We leave our home port and spend a day and night at sea to get the sea legs growing and sharpen up on our boating drills. Retired Navy, can't help it. On our 3rd day, we arrived at a small-ish marina, roughly 200 berths. In my country, calling ahead on VHF is not a thing, so the only thing to do is either going in with a boat or sending in the dinghy to spot for a berth. Now, occupied berths are marked with a red sign. Available is a green sign. My kids know this and are also learning to spot a fitting berth. Our boat is 3.60 meters wide and berths are different in width, so the trick is to spot a berth wider than 3.60, but not wider than 4 meters because that's the golden difference. Any berth wider than 4 meters costs a ton of money and is meant for bigger boats. Well, Captain Dinghy was volunteering, as always, to scout ahead, while my son were watching from just outside the inlet. She's equipped with, of course, a life jacket, radio, not VHF since that requires a certificate, and a good idea on how wide 3.60 meters really is. Our dinghy happens to be 3.5 meters long, so as long as she can fit the dinghy from end to end between the posts it fits, including engine. Now, most people that hang around marinas are used to seeing children in dinghies, and wouldn't raise an eyebrow over a 9-year-old girl in a small dinghy wearing a life jacket and looking for empty berths. However, not all people are like that, which we would soon find out. She found one and radioed that back saying, "I've got one, Daddy, it's the Jeep here and I'm waiting for you here, over." I reply with, "Good job, en route now, Daddy out." The owners of the boats on either side are the caring, nice older couples, and especially the port side neighbors are completely stunned by Captain Dinghy and her professionalism. They are small talking when we arrive at the berth and help moorings, for which I pay with a cold beer and a soda for the kids. Happy days all around. On the opposite side of the pier, a couple of boats also are flying the Jolly Roger, so the kids are off after a quick lunch. The berth directly opposite us is also available, but knowing from experience that will soon change. And how right I was. Later in the afternoon, we saw the arrival of Karen and her sailing circus. They arrived while the nice grandparents next door and I were discussing nice marinas to visit, and as a matter of course, we stood by to help receive lines and help with mooring. To simplify their docking, it was a crazy show. They had a trimaran, 3 hulls. The outer 2 can retract when you dock and extend when you sail. They knew nothing about the boat, so clearly a rental boat. After 5 or 6 attempts of docking with one side retracted, other side retracted, no side retracted, full power plus screaming all around. The harbor master even came down to join us. Now we stand 8 guys plus 1 harbor master and just look like, "What are you doing?" Even my 7-year-old son comes by with some new friends and goes, "Are they for real?" Grandma Port quickly provided some ice and soda for the kids. She was amazing. We managed to convince them, the wrecking crew, to throw us the forward lines, and we could pull them in after they retracted both pontoons. This took the better part of 1.5 hours. When they finally docked, they acted like they invented boating. I know that docking in a foreign port can be quite difficult, but when you need 8 people to help you, one might keep a low profile. Not that couple though. They were totally clueless about how to get shore power, water, and how to register with the harbor master, who happens to stand right in front of them when they docked. The harbor master is now trying to guide how to register, what to do regarding shore power and water, and boy did they listen. Karen started to yell about how they had paid a lot of money to rent that boat, and how they expected harbor fees to be included in the rent, and to threaten to report the harbor master to the rental company they used, and get him fired for trying to extort money from them. After her endless monologue, there were about 8 to 10 guys laughing. The harbor master just looked at them and went, "Okay, these are the rules. Each marina requires a fee for docking. That fee covers power, water, and the space you occupy. It includes access to bathrooms, cooking facilities, and cleaning. Your rental company does not own any marina. Is that clear?" The circus husband understood, but failed to convey the last part to Karen, something we found out later the next morning. Next morning, we prepared to go underway. Kids are saying goodbye to their new friends. My son is pampered with cookies from Grandma Port and Starboard, broken hearts from the young girls in the marina. He's got blonde hair with curls and green eyes, a heartbreaker, and Captain Dingy is getting ready to go underway. She's dressed in the uniform for the part, unicorn PJ pants, swimwear, and life jacket. Here's where the title comes into play. We are finishing our stay, meaning pulling our shore power cable, testing lights and systems, testing our bow thruster and prop, VHF and dinghy, while I'm standing at the stern ready to single up the lines so my curly-haired son will have an easy job. Karen comes running up to me. "Karen, what are you doing?" Me, "Good morning. We'll get underway now. We're going to the island recommended by Grandma Port. Enjoy your stay here." "What? You can't leave?" Pretty sure I can. Why wouldn't I?" "Because we want that boat." "What? You want my boat?" I laugh at her. "Lady, my boat is not for sale, so excuse me. We have to go." "No, all boats are property of rental company X, and we called them yesterday and chartered that boat. Now hand it over or else." "Lady, you're nuts." To my son, clear forward lines. To Captain Dingy, meet up outside the marina, docking starboard side. Now we are not attached to the marina anymore and my son is rolling up the bow lines, when Karen tries to grab the push bit to keep us in the marina. Well, she lost that battle. Me, all stop, man overboard. She came up yelling and screaming. Starboard Grandad guided her on board their boat and asked her what she was doing, while Port Grandad called the harbor master. Me, is she okay? Both Granddads, yes, we got her, enjoy your trip, and we'll see you in Port Y. We leave and head for Port Y, and oh boy did I hope she was a one-time Karen. Story 3. This is the story of how my snake collection saved me from 4 years of psychological torture. For context, because my dad was a diplomat, our family would move to a new country every 3 or 4 years. I mostly went to international schools with kids of various nationalities. New kids were popping up all the time, and so the students were often welcoming. That wasn't the case for me when I came to a new school in the 9th grade. Most international schools teach kindergarten to 12th grade. We had an elementary, middle, and high school, but all on the same campus, so not all freshmen were new like in America. See, I was always considered the weird girl for a number of reasons, and I suppose it depends on who you ask. My clothes were too childish, I read too many books, I never flirted with any guys, I'm female, I was a fan of cartoons, etc. Whatever people found wrong with my personality, it was just weird. So, because of this apparent weirdness, I was often a target for bullying, and this school was no exception. Because of my shyness and inferiority complex, I wasn't very good at standing up for myself. I could go on and on about the various bullying incidents across 12 years of my educational career. But this is a revenge story, so here is one of the few times I actually managed to get revenge on my bullies. Now on to the story. Because we had a small student body of roughly 50 kids per grade. This is pretty average for international schools. I didn't have a wide choice of kids to sit with at lunch. I settled for a group of about 7-10 girls in my grade who seemed nice and unassuming at first. The problem was I was the only person in my grade who still brought lunch from home, rather than buy lunch from the cafeteria. It wasn't that I couldn't afford it or anything. I just didn't like waiting in those long lines, and the food they served wasn't that great anyway. For some reason, the girls at my table considered this weird. My lunch bag wasn't even that childish. It was just a standard, purple, thermal bag that zipped at the top in a way that you can't see what's inside at a glance. This will be important for later. One day, one girl in particular, let's call her Freda, decided it would be funny to swipe my apple juice box when she thought I wasn't looking. When I asked her to give it back, she pretended not to know what I was talking about. She then passed the juice box under the table to the girl next to her and held up her empty hands as proof. The others joined in, passing the juice around under the table and acting like nothing was going on. They eventually gave the juice back to me, unopened, sneaking it back on the table and pointing out that it had been there all along, as if I hadn't just witnessed the whole event. This went on for weeks. They'd take my juice box, pass it around, then give it back to me in what they thought was a sneaky way. Never drinking the juice, just to torment me, I suppose. And then they'd giggle like, well, a bunch of schoolgirls. Now normally, when someone is teasing me like this, I tell the teacher. But this whole thing was just so ridiculous, I didn't think the teachers would take me seriously. And it was really more annoying and inconvenient than upsetting. I would have moved to a different table, but like I said, there weren't many options in this small cafeteria at this small school. Years and years of bullying finally pushed me over the brink. I was not going to be the victim here like at all my other schools. Reason hadn't worked. The only way to get them to stop was to give them a taste of their own medicine. But I couldn't do anything to get them into trouble. So I had to get creative. In our family's frequent visits to zoos and aquariums, I'd built up a collection of snakes. Not real ones, but toy ones. Rubber snakes, wooden snakes, stuffed snakes, snake bouncy balls. I liked snakes. They mostly sat in a little box in my room, and I could finally put them to good use. One morning, when I packed my lunch for the day, I got 3 of my biggest rubber snakes and put them in my lunch bag. I made sure one was methodically coiled around my juice box, like my own personal guards. When lunch came, I sat at the table and ate my lunch like usual, like I'd said, because my bag zipped at the top. None of the girls could see what was inside when I opened it. I made sure when I pulled my food out, the snakes stayed inside. Then I got up and announced I was going to throw my napkin away in the trash can on the other side of the cafeteria. Because this was what I normally did, no one questioned it. I made sure the zipper at the top of my bag was open. So I walked to the trash can, hiding my smug smile, threw away my napkin, and when I came back, Frieda was fumbling with a rubber snake. It looked like it was flying out of her hands. As I sat down, Frieda demanded, "Why are there snakes in your lunch bag?" I simply replied, "Why is your hand in my lunch bag?" Long story short, they never stole my juice box again. And believe it or not, those girls actually ended up becoming my friends. I guess they learned I was not a person to mess with. It's a ridiculous story, but it was one of the first steps I took to come out of my shell and gain the self-confidence I desperately needed. Now I've learned not to take people's nonsense in a way that I don't have to use rubber snakes. But they're still coiled in a small box in my room, just in case. Story 4. So some backstory. I own a Jeep, #Jeep Life, fully built, lift kit, a DD bumpers, and the whole shebang. So one day, I'm coming home from work. It's a summer day, the roof is off, and I'm having some open-top fun. Stop at a red light and suddenly screech bang. I drive forward slightly and go back to assess the damage, and lo and behold, it's a Mercedes C-Class, new one on that as well. Completely destroyed from the front, and my beautiful Jeep had no damage apart from a few scratches. I went to check on the passenger of the Mercedes. Got them out. Luckily she was unharmed. These Mercs are definitely safe. Under a minute after she's out of the car, she starts screaming about how I wrecked her car. I told her calmly that she was the one who rammed into me. I think she understood how hitting her would be impossible. I offer to share our insurance details because I know that Mercedes damage doesn't come cheap. But she said she didn't have insurance. She insisted that I pay her $10,000 cash. How did she get this number? I don't know. I said that was just plain wrong. She hit me. It's her fault for not having insurance. She then went on a ramble on how her kids needed the money, and they had no money at the time. And now her kids will have to starve because she will have to pay to fix her car, and how it will all be my fault when they are on the street tomorrow. Yeah, on the street with a Mercedes. Does she think I'm dumb? That is why you should have insurance. But no, she said that she would call the cops if I didn't pay her. I refused as this is just dumb. So then she called the cops. Yeah. Cops came, assessed the damage, and asked us what happened, and she said, and I quote, "He backed into me at full speed on a red light." Then they asked me what happened, and I told them, and it became a he said, she said situation. Luckily, a shopkeeper was there and saw the whole thing, and even captured it on a surveillance camera. Needless to say, I came out on top. Cops got her for reckless driving and driving without insurance. She then started yelling at the cops about how they would just let a criminal get away. They explained that I did nothing wrong and that they now had video evidence. The partner of the cop came to me and told me if I could drive, I could leave, so I got in my Jeep and left. Never want to have a Karen experience again. Not worth it. P.S. If you have a lifted Jeep with heavy-duty bumpers, a Mercedes can't do much damage. Story 5. Okay, so I guess this is a great place to let this ridiculousness fly. A little backstory. My mom, who is on SSDI, top tier, almost $2,800 a month, has a very hard time budgeting. Last year, she decided to sell my grandparents' house on Oregon to move back to the Seattle area. She got the house by having my grandma with dementia change the will and cut out her 2 siblings, my uncle and aunt, and after my grandma passed the house and all the savings and belongings went to my mom. So she sells the house, and instead of buying a reasonable home, she has limited mobility and a bad prescription drug addiction and falls often. She buys herself and her 3 cats a 4,000 square foot home in a gated community. There was literally no money left over from the sale acquisition of a new home. I had to help by paying for a moving van and helpers. Before this, she had a settlement from a slip/fall lawsuit of roughly around $50,000, which she instantly rolled into a brand new 2018 Toyota Highlander. She had been left my grandma's 29 Aspen SUV, but the gas mileage was not good enough. Then she backs into a tree and busts a tail light on new car a few months after buying it. Goes to the dealership to fix the tail light. Decides she needs a brand new 2019 fully loaded Highlander with a tow package, which she has nothing to tow, so this is a mystery. She trades in her 2018 with 5,000 miles on it, and takes out a $35,000 car loan, and this is on a fixed income, and she always has money struggles. So here is like around $80,000 of a car at this point. Excellent. She is constantly begging my brother, sister and I for money. My brother is 38, I'm 37, and my sister is 27. We are all trying to establish ourselves in our lives, careers, and financial security. I am a stay-at-home mom with 2 young kids. We live off my husband's income as an apprentice tradesman and have to be very frugal. We qualify to live in low-income housing, and I find ways to be resourceful, like donating our time and vehicle to help a local food bank, so we are able to get some food as well as help the community. We don't own a home or brand new fancy cars, and if you take away rent and do the math for just us 2 adults, we live on less than her monthly SSDI. Yet every month she has a sad story about how she can't afford X or Y. She finally canceled her $175 a month TV plan. I have asked her more times than I can count to please not bring up money matters with me. I've offered to help her budget, but she refuses the help, only wanting money. Well, she brought up money the other day when she came up to our apartment to visit the grandkids. But really she came up to pilfer the food bank transportation we do every Sunday before we drop at food bank, saying she didn't have enough money to pick up her prescriptions. This is just after she told me she gets her prescriptions in the mail. I believe she has drug-induced dementia from the 15 years on benzos and opiates. I told her I could spare $15 for gas money, but that was all. I explained we are a family of 4 living on one income, and we have a tight budget. I remind her she has had plenty of opportunity to save or spend her money more wisely. So she takes the $15 and goes. I got a call the next day of her crying, saying that the way I brought up her poor money choices was terribly upsetting, pretty much making me out to be the villain and her the victim. This self-victimizing routine is her go-to. It's exhausting because I've done so much for her. I put my life on hold for 5 years after college to be her full-time caretaker. She fell and needed a hip replacement and got hooked on opiates. I couldn't hold down a job or any healthy relationships because I was constantly being called back home to get this or that for her, take her to doctor appointments, etc. I could literally write a novel in all the ways I've helped her. I feel like this post is a novella. Anyways, screw her for trying to make me out to be the bad guy because I don't give her money to get extra prescriptions to fuel her addiction. Screw her for even putting it out there and begging my family for money when she has so much. And lastly, screw her for never respecting my boundaries, which I need to preserve my well-being. After her sob story phone call, I was upset, and it took me a few hours to get my head on straight. I wasn't a good mom to my kids at that time. So to be a better mom to my kids, I'm putting old mom in timeout. I need a break from her entitled self. End rant. Thank you and good night. Edit. Thank you so much for all the amazing responses and suggestions. I am on the verge of tears. It has been such a long, lonely path with my mom, and I literally have 0 peers who I can relate to. It's good to know I am not alone. You all are the wind beneath my wings. Insert cheesy music. I have scanned the medical power of attorney documents this morning and sent to her main document and am finding the emails of the other doctors. I will submit claims for elder abuse relating to a few incidents, namely the car. I think this will be important in declaring her incompetent in the near future. I realize I have indeed been enabling her, and am exhibiting codependent tendencies. I am definitely driven by guilt, the need to be a good daughter, which I totally am and don't need to prove it again and again. I will have a lot to talk to my therapist about on Saturday. For now, the answer is no contact with her, so I am able to heal and gather my wits and energy for the coming battle pertaining to declaration of incompetence. I am hoping with all my heart she decides to stop with the meds and try sobriety. Yet my gut tells me she isn't ready at this point, so I will protect myself in the ways I can in the meantime. Story 6. I was helping my youngest daughter pack up the truck to move over the weekend. We had a good amount of people, so the work went quick. There was close to an hour before they had to leave. There was my daughter, her maternal grandfather driving, and another car following with more things plus her 2 kids. Her grandfather worked with my father in the same mill, and once in a while they worked together. This was a story he laughed at as he told it. Cast. Dad, Roy the grandfather to my daughter, shop supervisor, general manager. This is as close to how Roy, the grandfather to my daughter, told it and how I remember what he said. There was a piece of equipment needing fixed. He said what it was, but right now I have no clue what he was talking about. I just remember this cost was close to $300K back in the mid-80s. It was the original piece from when the mill opened in 1968, so parts were obsolete and Dad had to make them by hand. Roy said the bearing burnt up and stripped some teeth from the main gear. From what he was saying, Dad not only made the gear by hand, he also made a puller to get the gear off because that bearing needing replacing was behind it. Dad had gone to get the puller when the shop supervisor came over to talk with Roy. He asked how long the job would be and was told at least 5 days. 3 days to make or repair the new gear and another 2 days for tear down and setup. Roy said Dad might be able to fix this one, and if that was the case, 3 days maximum. The shop super asked why Roy was just sitting there and not taking the gear off. He explained where Dad had gone and what he was getting, and he would be back in a minute or two. This was not good enough for the shop supervisor, and he grabbed a sledgehammer and said, "If you just tap it with this, it should come loose enough to just pull with your hand." Dad had just stepped into the room and hollered for the shop supervisor to stop before he broke something. I guess he looked right at Dad and smacked the gear. I have no idea what it was made of, but he hit it in just the right spot to break the gear into a couple of pieces. Needless to say, Dad and Roy were upset. They walked into the office of the general manager and told him what just happened, and instead of the 3 days they could have had it done in, it will now take the 5 or so days. He was mad. First, the shop supervisor is not to touch any tool unless passing it to the person using it, and another is he is not to try any repairs himself under any circumstance. The next day when Dad and Roy got to the machine, there was a gear sitting there. The shop supervisor came over and said he had it flown in from somewhere in the States, and it cost $20,000 because it was air expressed. Dad tried telling him that is the wrong gear, and he will just build one he knows will work. Shop supervisor told him to use the gear he bought because he wasn't going to waste that much company money without using what he bought. Here is the MC. Dad and Roy got the bearing changed and were done getting the gear into place. It was made from a different material and a few other major differences. When they were all done, they called over the shop supervisor and the general manager to show how the machine is fixed. Roy and Dad gave the shop supervisor the honor of starting it up and showing how well it's working. With a big smile, he started it up. It ran well for about the first 5 minutes of the 15-minute test run when it started making odd noises. Before the shop supervisor could hit the emergency stop button, there was a loud bang and lots of screeching metal. Dad and Roy took the covering off and saw that not only the gear was destroyed, but it was in tiny little pieces all through the machine. The main rod where the bearing got replaced had broken in a couple of places. It would cost the company more money to buy the parts and fix this one than it would to order one from Japan. Within 6 weeks, the Japanese workers brought the new machine, but had set it up and calibrated. This cost the mill just under $3 million, where it would have cost under $5,000 if Dad and Roy were left to fix it. Since the shop supervisor wasn't part of the union, was fired on the spot. When the mill fired him and wouldn't even let him on the property, he had to wait for security to bring everything from his office. Roy said the shop supervisor wasn't made to pay back any money for his major mess-up, but his name was blacklisted in the industry. He moved away within a month, and as far as Roy knew, no one had heard from him since. Dad and Roy didn't get any real bonus for the job, but there was a little extra on their paycheck the next week. Roy said he can't remember how much, but it wasn't a huge amount, but it made a difference. I love hearing stories about my dad from work. He always had a warped sense of humor, so any met by him was usually a doozy. But it wasn't just at work. Anywhere was not safe from him. Too bad he isn't here to tell me more stories, but I have memories of some, and I hear more from people he was friends with or worked with. I hope you enjoy reading them as much as I loved hearing them.